The night was shining bright in Sunset Valley, a place where every house looked like a small palace and every car sparkled like diamonds. Expensive perfumes floated in the air as rich guests walked into the grand mansion of Madame Veronica Winford, a well-known millionaire who loved showing off more than she loved breathing. Her mansion was filled with golden decorations, crystal lights, and paintings worth more than most families earned in 5 years. Inside this world of glitter and pride stood Elena Maid, Veronica's maid for almost 20 years. Her simple uniform looked out of place among all the expensive dresses and suits, but she kept her head down and did her work quietly. She had learned long ago that in this house, silence was safer than words. Beside her worked her son, Jerome Maid, a 17-year-old boy with deep brown skin and eyes filled with quiet strength. He helped his mother during special events to earn a little extra money. Jerome never complained because he knew how much Elena had sacrificed for him. She cleaned this huge house day after day just to keep food on their table. Jerome moved around the room serving drinks. He felt the stares from the guests, the whispers behind their shiny glasses. But he didn't react. He was used to being looked at like someone who didn't belong. But tonight, something would happen that no one in that room expected. Something that would change the lives of everyone, especially Jerome's. Madame Veronica walked proudly into the center of the living room, her long diamond earrings swinging like tiny chandeliers. She was in one of her moods, the kind where she wanted attention from everyone. And when she wanted attention, she usually picked someone weaker to embarrass. Her eyes landed on Jerome. A slow smile appeared on her face. Not a friendly one. A smile that meant trouble. "Come here, boy," she called loudly, her voice echoing across the room. Jerome froze for a second. Elena felt her heart drop. She had seen that tone too many times. It meant humiliation was coming. Jerome walked toward her slowly, his hands still holding a tray of glasses. Veronica leaned back in her velvet chair and pointed toward the large Italian marble chessboard sitting on the center table. It wasn't there for playing, it was decoration, part of her wealthy image. "How about showing us," she said, her voice dripping with arrogance, "how you play chess in the slums?" Laughter erupted from the guests, soft, cruel, hidden behind fake smiles and diamonds. Elena felt something break inside her. But she stayed silent. She needed this job. Jerome simply stood still. His eyes didn't show sadness. They showed thought. As if he was observing every person in the room the same way he studied chess pieces. Because unknown to every rich face in that room, Jerome Maid had been studying chess since he was 9 years old. Not with teachers. Not with fancy lessons. But with borrowed books from the public library. With old YouTube videos watched on a cracked phone. With games played in his head when he had no board. He wasn't just good. He was a silent prodigy. But he had never bragged. He never used his gift to hurt people. He kept his talent hidden like a secret treasure. Veronica tapped the chessboard impatiently. "Well, do you at least know how the pieces move?" One businessman leaned forward. "I bet he doesn't even know the knight moves in an L shape," he whispered loudly. More laughter. Elena gripped her hands tightly. Her son didn't deserve this. Not after all the nights he stayed up studying. Not after all the mornings he woke up early to help her carry heavy laundry baskets. Not after all the dreams he kept quiet because life told him they were impossible. Jerome finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "If you want me to play, ma'am," he said politely, "I will play." Some guests stopped laughing. There was something different about the way he spoke. Something confident. Something that didn't fit the image they had of him. Veronica sat down on the white side of the board. "Of course I'll play white," she said proudly. "It's a family tradition. And I always win." Jerome nodded once. "Then I will play black." He sat quietly and began arranging his pieces. But he did so with perfect precision, each piece centered, aligned, placed carefully like a true competitor. One guest raised an eyebrow. "That's odd. He sets them like a trained player." But Veronica ignored the comment. "Let's make this more fun," she said loudly. If he gives me even a tiny scare, I'll donate $1,000 to some public school or something." Laughter again. But this time, Jerome smiled slightly. Not a childish smile. A warrior's smile. His mother recognized it instantly, and fear and pride rushed through her heart at the same time. The game began. Veronica opened confidently. "Pawn to e4, she announced, as if she were teaching a child. Jerome didn't even blink. "C5, he replied instantly. A murmur spread across the room. "The Sicilian defense," one old guest whispered. "That's advanced." Veronica's face tightened. "It means nothing. He probably memorized that by luck." But Jerome's moves were too smooth, too fast, too exact. He wasn't copying. He wasn't guessing. He was thinking 10 moves ahead. He played like someone who lived and breathed chess. Veronica tried to stay calm, but her hands moved slower. She played safe, scared to make a mistake. Jerome responded instantly every time. Pawn structures. Developments. Strategic traps. Everything danced in his mind like a perfect map. Guests leaned closer. Whispers grew louder. A strange tension filled the room. It wasn't the tension of a joke anymore. It was the tension of a shifting power. Then Jerome made his 10th move. A pawn sacrifice. Something bold. Something dangerous. Something only a true expert would see. Mr. Lawson, one of the wealthiest hotel owners in the city, gasped softly. "That's a trap," he whispered. "A deadly trap." But Veronica didn't know. She thought she was winning. She smiled proudly, believing she had tricked Jerome. 10 seconds later, she realized she hadn't tricked him. She had walked into his plan. But she was too proud to admit it. She looked up, forcing a laugh. "You got lucky. Beginner's luck." Jerome didn't respond. But his silence said everything. This wasn't luck. This was years of late-night study. Years of talent nobody noticed. Years of strength built from struggle. And now, in this golden room where he was expected to be entertainment, he was becoming something else. Someone impossible to ignore. The room grew strangely quiet as Jerome made his next move. His fingers glided over the marble piece with the confidence of someone who had played thousands of games, except he had played most of them in his mind, with no fancy board, no shiny table, no applauding crowd. "Why are you taking so long?" Veronica snapped when she saw the guests watching with interest. "It's just a simple match." But it was no longer simple. Even the guests began to sense it. For the first time that night, the arrogant laughter faded. The businessmen leaned forward, the politicians paused their quiet conversations, and even the waiters stepped aside to observe. Something was happening. Something no one expected. Jerome's eyes stayed calm, focused, watching the whole board at once. Every piece mattered. Every move mattered. He wasn't just playing a match. He was rewriting the power in the room. Veronica tapped her nails against the table, annoyed by the new silence. "Well," she demanded, "it's your turn. Try not to embarrass yourself." Jerome didn't answer her directly. Instead, he quietly placed his knight on a square no one expected. A few guests gasped softly. "That's brilliant," whispered Mr. Lawson. Veronica looked confused. What's brilliant? It's just a knight." "No," Lawson replied, leaning forward. "It sets up 2 threats at once." Veronica blinked, studying the board. Her smile cracked. She didn't see it. She didn't understand the danger. But the others did. Jerome had just taken control. Elena watched from the side, her hands clasped tight against her chest. She had never seen her son play like this. She knew he was good, she saw him practice every night, but this was something different. This was her son showing the world who he truly was. Veronica moved her queen quickly, trying to regain control. Jerome responded instantly. His bishop slid smoothly across the board. Check. The word hit the room like a small explosion. Veronica froze. What? How is it check already? That's not possible. I was winning. Some guests exchanged looks. You were never winning, someone said softly. Veronica shot them a sharp glare, but she couldn't hide the tremble in her hands. She leaned closer to the board, her expensive perfume filling the air, and stared at the pieces as if they had betrayed her. This board is confusing, she muttered. The colors are too similar. And the lights are too bright. No one believed her. Not even her. She lifted her head slowly, her face turning red. You planned that, didn't you? She said to Jerome. You waited for the perfect moment to embarrass me. Jerome lifted his eyes and spoke calmly. I only played the best move, ma'am. His voice was steady, polite, but strong enough to silence the room. Veronica stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I refuse to be tricked in front of my guests. It's not a trick, Jerome said. It's strategy. The guests murmured among themselves. Elena felt her heart race. She wanted to protect her son, but he didn't need protection right now. Not tonight. Because tonight, Jerome wasn't a servant's child. He was a force none of them understood yet. Veronica inhaled sharply and forced herself to sit again. She wasn't about to lose control of her own event. Fine, she said stiffly. Let's continue. I am not going to be defeated by someone from your background. Jerome lowered his eyes. He heard the insult clearly, but he didn't react. He didn't need to. His next moves would answer everything. He played a rook move. Smooth, powerful, opening a dangerous line. Mr. Lawson muttered, He's building a trap. A very clever one. Veronica swallowed. She didn't see the trap, but she felt it. She felt the room's attention shifting away from her. No, she said under her breath. He can't beat me. I've been playing since I was 10. Jerome didn't look up. I've been studying since I was 9. The words hit Veronica harder than any chess move. Studying, she repeated. Studying what? You don't have a tutor. You don't have a club. You don't have equipment. What could you possibly study? Jerome's voice remained calm. Everything I could find. Books from the library. Old videos. Free lessons online. I practiced every night after helping my mom. Elena's eyes filled with tears. He said it simply, without pride, just the truth. The room grew still again. And then, Jerome made the move no one saw coming. He sacrificed his knight. A bold, brilliant strike. Gasps filled the room. Mr. Lawson stood up slightly. That is unbelievable. That's a grandmaster-level tactic. Veronica's face twisted with disbelief. You gave away your knight? Why would you do something so stupid? Jerome made his next move. Then the next. Then the next. Every move cut deeper into her position. Until finally, check again. Veronica felt her stomach sink. No, she whispered. No, this can't be happening. Her voice shook. Her hands shook. Her pride cracked. She stared at the board as if it was a monster swallowing her whole. How did you do this? She whispered. Jerome looked up for the first time with a calm strength that filled the room. Because, ma'am, you played me as a joke. He paused. And I played you like a real opponent. Several guests inhaled sharply. Elena covered her mouth, tears threatening to fall. Veronica slammed her fist lightly on the table. I refuse to lose. Let me redo that move. I didn't see it. The rule says no, whispered a guest. Veronica glared. I make the rules in my house. Jerome looked at her gently. Not on a chessboard, ma'am. That single sentence carried years of quiet power. Years of watching his mother work hard. Years of studying in silence. Years of being underestimated. Veronica felt the floor of her pride crumble. She looked around desperately, searching for one face, just one person, to defend her. But all she saw were eyes filled with judgment and admiration for the boy she tried to embarrass. The room shifted. Power shifted. Respect shifted. And Veronica knew it. Her breaths turned shaky. Her posture stiffened. She tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. "I am tired. That's why I'm losing. I had a long week. You know how it is." No one replied. Jerome waited politely for her next move. She made one. A desperate one. Jerome's response hit the room like thunder. "Checkmate in 3. "Impossible," Veronica whispered, shaking her head. "You're lying. This is fake. This is all planned." She looked at Jerome with wide eyes, full of disbelief and fear. "Who trained you? Who taught you to humiliate me?" Jerome slowly stood up. "No one trained me to humiliate anyone," he said quietly. "I studied because I love learning. I studied because I wanted to be better. I studied because life didn't give me anything easily." His eyes softened, filled with something deeper than anger. "I studied because my mom worked so hard, and I wanted to make her proud." Elena finally let the tears fall. A luxurious Beverly Hills living room, golden lights, expensive marble chessboard in the center. A wealthy white millionaire woman pointing arrogantly at the chessboard, smirking. A 17-year-old black boy in simple clothes stands confidently across the table, calm and intelligent eyes. Wealthy guests in the background whispering and laughing. Dramatic lighting, high contrast, cinematic film look, strong emotions, 4K ultra-realistic. The fallen king lay on its side, the tiny marble piece reflecting the golden lights of the mansion. It was small, harmless, almost delicate, yet its position shook the entire room. It marked the defeat no one expected, the truth no one could deny, and the shift no one could stop. Jerome stood calmly, his hands by his sides, breathing steady. Not proud. Not boastful. Just quiet, like someone who had spent his whole life learning how to carry dignity even in silence. But around him, the silence wasn't calm. It was sharp. It was heavy. And it was painful, but not for him. For Veronica. Her face turned pale, then red, then pale again. She stared at the board, then at Jerome, then back at the board, as if waiting for the pieces to transform into something that made sense. This isn't real," she whispered, her voice shaking. "A servant's son can't beat me. It's impossible." Elena took one step forward, her hands trembling. She wanted to speak. She wanted to defend her son. She wanted to protect him. But her voice was stuck in her throat. Mr. Lawson cleared his throat. "Veronica," he said softly, "this young man did not just beat you. He outplayed you from the first move." The words hit her like a slap. "No," she said sharply. "No, I refuse to accept that. This was a setup. Someone taught him to do this to me." Jerome looked at her with surprise, not because her reaction hurt him, but because it was so predictable. He had seen this kind of anger before. Not in the rich, but in anyone who couldn't accept losing. "I studied on my own," Jerome said gently. "I didn't come here to embarrass you. You invited me to play." Veronica's voice cracked. "I invited you to entertain us, not to humiliate me." That word, humiliate, floated in the air like poison. A few guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. One woman whispered to her husband, "She's making it worse." Another added, "He wasn't humiliating her. She humiliated herself." Veronica heard them. Her eyes widened with anger and shame. "Stop whispering," she snapped at the guests, her voice echoing across the room. "All of you. This is my house, and I." But she didn't finish. Because at that moment, Elena stepped forward. Her heart was pounding, but her voice finally unlocked. "Madam Veronica," she said, her tone trembling but strong, "my son didn't humiliate you. He only showed what he learned with his own hard work." Veronica spun around, shocked. "You are speaking to me like that?" Elena didn't look away. "Yes," she whispered. For the first time. The room froze again. Elena continued, her voice thick with emotion. You don't know what he's been through. You don't know the nights he stayed up studying by candlelight because our electricity was cut. You don't know how he walked miles to the library because we couldn't afford internet. You don't know how he fixed an old broken computer just to watch chess games. Tears slipped down her cheeks. You don't know how hard he worked. You only see where he comes from. But you don't see who he truly is. Some guests lowered their heads, ashamed. Jerome looked at his mother with warmth and pride. But Veronica... Her chest rose and fell quickly. Her pride was crumbling. So, she snapped, wiping her eyes before tears could fall. So he worked hard. Everyone works hard. That doesn't mean he belongs in my social circle. Mr. Lawson's wife gasped softly. Congresswoman Hall, another guest, crossed her arms with irritation. A ripple of disgust passed through the crowd. But Veronica didn't stop. You all think this is inspiring, she said bitterly, but it's embarrassing. I am the laughingstock now. A boy like him beat me. Jerome finally stepped forward. His voice was calm. But this time, there was something deeper inside it. Something sharp enough to cut through every arrogant word. Ma'am, he said, your loss is not because of who I am. He paused. It is because of who you thought I wasn't. A soft gasp moved through the room. Elena covered her mouth. Congresswoman Hall lowered her glass, impressed. Even the waiters stood still, listening. Veronica blinked in disbelief. You talk like you're better than me. No, Jerome said softly. I talk like someone who respects himself. Those words hit harder than any chess move. Veronica's breath caught. She stumbled back slightly, grabbing the chair for support. How dare you, she whispered. You were nothing but entertainment. Jerome shook his head. No, ma'am. I was your lesson. The room fell into complete stillness. A powerful stillness. A painful stillness. A stillness that made everyone reflect on their own lives, their pride, their assumptions, their blind spots. Veronica couldn't stand it. No, she cried suddenly. No, I won't let this end like this. Let's play again. Right now. Mr. Lawson said gently, Veronica, you lost. With dignity, it's better to accept defeat. I don't accept anything, she shouted. Reset the board. Reset it now. I'll prove it was luck. But Jerome didn't sit back down. He didn't even approach the board. He simply lifted his hand in a gentle refusal. I don't need a rematch, he said kindly. You played with your pride. I played with my heart. Our reasons were never the same. Veronica stared at him with trembling eyes. She wasn't angry anymore. She was broken. Because deep down, she knew the truth. Even if they played 10 more times, the result would be the same. Jerome wasn't better because she was worse. Jerome was better because he had worked harder. Mom, Jerome said softly, turning toward Elena, can we go? I have school early in the morning. The ordinary sentence sounded extraordinary in that room. A young man who defeated a millionaire. Still thinking about school. That alone spoke more loudly than any speech. Elena nodded, wiping her tears. But before they could leave, Congresswoman Hall stepped forward. Young man, she said, extending her hand, I need to ask, are you interested in scholarships? Jerome blinked. Scholarships? Yes, she said, smiling warmly. Full ones. I know several universities that would love to support a mind like yours. Jerome's mouth fell open slightly. Really? Really, she said. Call my office on Monday. We will make sure your talent never goes unnoticed again. Veronica's knees buckled. Universities, scholarships, opportunities, for him. Her eyes filled with horror as she realized something. By trying to belittle him, she had accidentally revealed him. and the world was ready to lift him higher than she ever stood. Jerome took the congresswoman's card gently. "Thank you, ma'am," he said with true gratitude. Veronica watched helplessly as her guests surrounded Jerome, praising him, congratulating him, shaking his hand. No one looked at her anymore. Nobody. And for the first time in her life, Veronica Winford felt what it was like to be invisible. The night air outside the mansion felt cool and gentle against Jerome's face as he and his mother stepped into the quiet driveway. The golden lights from the house behind them flickered like fading memories. Elena held her son's arm tightly, her hands still trembling from everything that had happened. She whispered softly, "Jerome, I am so proud of you. You held your head high. You played with honor." Jerome smiled slowly. "I just wanted to show them that we deserve respect, Mama." Elena wiped a tear. "You did more than that. You showed them who you truly are." As they walked away, Elena didn't notice that several guests peered through the window, watching them leave, not with pity, but with admiration. Back inside the mansion, Veronica stood frozen in the same spot, staring at the chessboard. Pieces were still scattered across it from her last desperate move. Her fallen king lay on its side, mocking her pride. Her guests began whispering among themselves. One businessman sighed. "That boy has real talent." Another shook his head. "Imagine humiliating someone like that and then losing so badly." Congresswoman Hall placed her glass down firmly. "Veronica, tonight was unacceptable. You mocked a child who did nothing wrong, and he responded with more grace than all of us combined." Veronica blinked, stunned. "You're taking his side." Hall crossed her arms. "I'm taking the side of what's right." The murmurs grew louder. The room had shifted. No one admired Veronica anymore. Someone whispered, "I think she owes that boy an apology." A cold wave rushed through Veronica's body. Apologize? To a maid's son? The idea made her heart beat faster, not out of humility, but out of panic. I'm tired," she mumbled suddenly. "Everyone please, leave." But people didn't leave because she asked. They left because they wanted to. Veronica realized it when the last guest walked past her without saying goodbye. She was alone. Truly alone. And the quiet of the empty mansion felt louder than all the laughter that once filled it. The next morning, the story had already begun spreading. It started with a single whisper from a guest who posted. A millionaire invited her maid's son to play chess as a joke. He destroyed her in 20 moves. People didn't know names yet. Only the scene. By afternoon, another post appeared. Young chess prodigy embarrasses rich woman who mocked him. Then another. She laughed at him. He checkmated her. And then a short video leaked, recorded secretly by one of the guests. Not the whole game. Just the end. Veronica shouting. Elena speaking with tears in her eyes. And Jerome saying, "You didn't lose because of who I am. You lost because of who you thought I wasn't." The internet exploded. Thousands of comments. Then hundreds of thousands. People from around the world reacted. "Who is this kid? He spoke better than most adults. Protect this boy at all costs. That millionaire is finished. This belongs in a movie. Scholarships need to find him." Within 48 hours, the hashtag #ChessBoyJerome began trending. But the biggest wave came when Congresswoman Hall finally posted the full story on her official page. She didn't include Veronica's name at first. But everyone figured it out quickly. "Yes," one comment said, "that's Veronica Winford's mansion. I recognize the hallway." Another added, "She always treated workers badly. This doesn't surprise me." Veronica's name trended for all the wrong reasons. Meanwhile, Jerome sat quietly at the small kitchen table in their tiny apartment, staring at his old chessboard with worn-out plastic pieces. The board had scratches. The pieces didn't even match. But to him, it was beautiful. Elena set a plate of rice and beans in front of him. "Eat something," she said softly. Jerome nodded, but he was deep in thought. Mama, do you think people will forget soon? Elena sat down across from him. I don't know, Jerome. But whatever happens, you did nothing wrong. He nodded slowly, but his heart still felt heavy. He didn't want attention. He didn't want fame. He just wanted respect. A knock came at the door. Elena stood quickly. It's probably Mrs. Ramos from upstairs. But it wasn't. When she opened the door, two men in suits stood there. One smiled politely. Good afternoon, ma'am. Is this the home of Jerome Madu? Elena froze, nervous. Why, yes. Why? The man handed her a letter with a golden seal. This is a formal invitation from Westbrook University. We would like to offer your son a full scholarship for his academic and chess talents. Elena gasped. A full? Yes, ma'am. It includes housing, meals, books, and training. All expenses paid. Jerome's chair scraped loudly as he stood. Are you serious? He asked, stepping forward. Very serious, the man replied. We saw the video. We saw how you think. We want you on our team. Jerome opened the sealed envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, real, official, stamped. His eyes scanned it quickly. Then he couldn't breathe. Mama, he choked. It's real. Elena covered her mouth, tears falling instantly. Her son, the boy she raised alone, the boy who studied by candlelight, the boy who walked miles to the library, had been offered a future she only prayed about. Jerome hugged her tightly. Mama, we made it. We really made it. But the surprises weren't over. Later that evening, Congresswoman Hall called. Jerome, I wanted to tell you something directly. I have arranged interviews for you. Opportunities. People want to hear your story. Jerome froze. Why? I didn't do anything big. You did, she said. You showed intelligence and dignity in the face of humiliation. The world needs to see young people like you. Jerome didn't know what to say. But Hall continued. And about that millionaire. Don't worry. The truth is clear to everyone. Jerome didn't want revenge. He didn't want her destroyed. He only wanted her to learn. But Veronica wasn't learning. She was panicking. She sat alone at her giant dining table with her laptop open, scrolling through thousands of comments attacking her. Heartless rich woman. Disgusting behavior. She deserves what she gets. Jerome is a king. She is a clown. She mocked a child. Unforgivable. Veronica slammed the laptop shut. No. It was supposed to be harmless. A simple joke. But deep down, she knew the truth. It wasn't a joke. It was cruelty. Cruelty she had gotten away with for years. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Sponsors dropping her. Clubs removing her. Charities rejecting her. Her friends stopped replying. Her reputation was gone. All because of a game of chess. No. All because she underestimated a boy with brilliance in his mind and strength in his heart. For the first time in her life, Veronica cried real tears. Not from anger. Not from embarrassment. But from regret. A painful, heavy regret. The next week, Jerome prepared for his first interview. His mother ironed his shirt 3 times, making sure it was perfect. Jerome touched her hand. Mama, thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you. Elena kissed his forehead. You earned this, my son. You fought for it. Jerome smiled. But he didn't know the biggest moment of his life was still ahead. Because soon, he wouldn't just become a college student. He would become a symbol of hope, of strength, and of a truth the world needed to hear. Jerome sat in the bright studio, his heart beating fast as lights shined down on him. This was his first real interview. Cameras were pointed at him, microphones were clipped to his shirt, and a reporter sat across from him with a warm smile. "Ready, Jerome?" she asked gently. He took a breath and nodded. Elena watched from the side, her hands pressed together, praying silently. She looked so small compared to all the equipment and cameras, but Jerome kept glancing at her for strength. She was his anchor in this new world. The reporter leaned forward. "Jerome, can you tell us what happened that night at the Winford mansion?" Jerome swallowed. His voice was soft at first. "She invited me to play chess. But she didn't really want a game. She wanted a joke." The reporter nodded carefully. "And how did that make you feel?" Jerome thought for a moment. "It hurt," he said honestly. "Not the game. Not the words. But the way she looked at me, like I didn't belong in the room. Like my mother's hard work didn't matter. Like I was nothing." Elena felt tears forming again. "But I decided," Jerome continued, "that if someone is going to judge me, I want them to judge the truth, not the story in their head." The reporter asked softly, "And the truth is?" Jerome lifted his eyes with quiet strength. "The truth is that talent can come from anywhere. From a mansion, or from a small apartment. From a private school, or from walking miles to a public library." His voice grew steadier. "I didn't study to beat her. I studied because I love learning. I studied because my mom believes in me. And I studied because you don't get to choose where you're born, but you can choose what you become." The studio fell completely silent. Tears rolled down Elena's cheeks with pride. The reporter whispered, "Jerome, that is beautiful." The interview aired that evening. Within hours, millions watched, and cried, and shared, and commented. People said, "He speaks with more grace than most adults. This boy is going places. That mother deserves the world. This is the story our generation needed." Offers poured in. Scholarships, chess coaches, tech internships, university recommendations, motivational speaking invitations. Jerome didn't know how to process any of it. He had spent years being ignored. Now the world couldn't stop seeing him. But while Jerome's world grew brighter, Veronica's world collapsed. She sat alone in her enormous mansion, scrolling through comments that felt like knives. "Her behavior is disgusting. She deserves every consequence. Apologize. Publicly. She tried to crush a child. Shame on her." Sponsors had cut ties. Charity boards removed her name. Her social circle abandoned her. She had become the symbol of the elite's cruelty. And she couldn't sleep at night. One evening, after many sleepless hours, she stared at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was messy, her hair unstyled, her eyes red. For the first time in her life, she didn't see a powerful woman. She saw a hollow one. She saw someone who had hurt others without even noticing. Someone who needed to change. Trembling, she wrote an email to the television station. She wanted to make a public statement. An apology. A real one. The next week, Veronica appeared on a live broadcast. She sat stiffly in the same chair where Jerome had sat days before. The reporter began gently. "Mrs. Winford, do you have something to say regarding the incident involving Jerome Madu?" Veronica exhaled slowly. "Yes," she said, her voice shaky. I need to apologize." Millions watched. Her hands shook as she continued. "I humiliated a young man who did nothing wrong. I treated him as entertainment when he deserved respect. I insulted his mother. I acted out of arrogance and ignorance." She swallowed hard. "And I was wrong." Those words were heavy. She continued, looking directly into the camera. "I have spent my life believing money made me important. But that night, a boy showed me that true worth comes from character, not wealth." Her voice cracked. "Jerome, if you are watching this, I am sorry." Her lips trembled. "You didn't humiliate me. You taught me." The reporter nodded, impressed by her sincerity. But Veronica wasn't done. "I understand if he never forgives me. But I want him and his mother to know. I am taking responsibility. She pulled out a folded paper. I am donating to educational programs in his name. I am stepping down from 2 charity boards that I used as shields for my pride. And I am seeking counseling to understand how my behavior hurt others for so long. She wiped her tears. I hope one day I can be a better person because of this. The broadcast ended. Some people forgave her. Some didn't. But everyone agreed it was a real apology. Jerome didn't celebrate her downfall. He didn't smile at her pain. He simply whispered, "I hope she learns." And he moved forward. His scholarships were confirmed. Universities competed for him. Chess clubs asked him to train. Even a movie studio reached out asking for documentary rights. His life had transformed. But Jerome didn't let it change his heart. Because his heart had always been shaped by humility, by struggle, by love, especially the love of his mother. 6 months later, Jerome walked onto the campus of Westbrook University. His full scholarship had come through. Students whispered as he passed, "That's him. The chess prodigy. He's amazing. He came from nothing and made it big." Jerome smiled shyly, adjusting his backpack. Elena hugged him tightly. "You made it, my son. You earned all of this." He smiled softly. "No, Mama. We made it." She cried into his shoulder, proud beyond words. Before she left, she whispered, "You beat her on the board, but you beat life much more." Jerome watched her walk away, then turned toward the campus with determination. He was no longer the boy serving drinks in a mansion. He was a student, a scholar, a leader, and a symbol. Later that evening, he received a message request on his phone. It was from Veronica. He opened it slowly. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I want to thank you. Because losing to you changed me. You made me see the world differently. I hope someday we can play again. This time with respect." Jerome stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, "Maybe one day. Respect is the first move." He hit send. And for the first time in a long time, he felt totally, completely at peace. That night, as he lay in his dorm bed, he whispered the title of the chapter of his life that had changed everything. Millionaire invites black Maid's son to play chess as a joke. She didn't know he was a child genius. He smiled to himself, not because of revenge, not because of pride, but because he proved something powerful. That greatness can rise from anywhere, from any home, any background, any struggle, and sometimes the people the world tries hardest to underestimate are the ones who rise the highest. The end.